Hello and welcome to the NW Sportscast. We got a video together with Levi Coover, and today's question, if the Mariners miss the playoffs, definitely a possibility, Levi, and if they do, is it time for SCOTT Servais to go?
And look, we're up by a game and a half right now. But yeah, I mean, it's possible things get derailed. We'll have to wait and see. I think if they do get derailed, then I do think there's a very strong argument. I'm not going to say strong chance because I don't know if that's how John Staton operates.
Yeah.
There's a strong argument that we need to get rid of SCOTT Servais. And look, it's a question of 9 seasons. You got to show some results. And
it'd be one playoff appearance in 9 seasons. Granted,
it would be 2 playoff wins in 9 seasons.
2 playoff wins in 9 seasons. A winning record. But there's a lot of talent, especially on the latter half of SCOTT Servais's manager career.
Yeah.
In the first 3 or 4 years, you can give him a pass for sure. I would say I don't think there was enough talent on that team, but I would still lean no. I really would. I think SCOTT Servais, what he does really well is something that's kind of hard to find. He's a really good players coach. I think that's kind of something you can't necessarily see in the numbers. We really haven't had much clubhouse disputes in the 8 years with Scott.
I mean, I could bring up some things, but recently there's Jesse Winker. Definitely was considered a playoff, a clubhouse. Not a menace, but he was a clubhouse disruptance, and he did not get along well with Mitch Haniger. If you want to go back a little bit further, 2018, that year when we were very close to the playoffs, I know there was a fight that broke out between D. Gordon and I don't remember who was in that fight.
Things are going to happen. Things are going to happen.
Things are going to happen, right? Things are going to, and Tim Beckham also.
But there hasn't been players. There hasn't been players. I would say, anything that I think that SCOTT Servais is a super calming presence that players all pretty much love. I don't.
For the most part. Yeah.
But when you compare that to an average, I think that's what Scott brings to the table. He's a really good players coach. He offers a lot of wisdom in that regard. The winning is a concern, but in baseball, I think, especially when comparing to something like football, there's a lot less a manager can really do to influence the outcome of the game. And you could argue that Scott's in-game decisions aren't exactly always, explainable or the right option. But a lot of times, let's be real, guys, that isn't entirely Scott. That's guys that, Scott is conferring with. That's someone else telling him in his ear what to do. There's a few decisions you can point to. Robbie Ray, for example, throwing, and that big one is going to kind of go down if Scott...
I actually have no qualms with that decision. I thought that was...
True, and lots of people do, though.
A lot of people do.
A lot of people do. But
I'll defend him for that. I think in that scenario, go to your best pitcher available.
But there's decisions like that, or lots of times it feels like maybe he leaves pitchers out a little bit too long or doesn't let his starter ride out when they're hot. You had that dispute last year with George Kirby. That was one of the big things.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that in the whole, I think people can obviously point to scenarios where he makes wrong decisions, but when looking at a lot of other managers, it's a 162-game season. Mistakes are going to be made.
You're right, Drew. Mistakes are going to be made, but 162 games is a long time. You know what's not a long time is 30 days. Right?
True.
30 days, that was how long it took for the Mariners to blow that 10-game lead. And maybe I'm still salty about that, but honestly...
The Astros went nine... What did they go?
Where did we go?
In the 30-game stretch.
Where did we go? It's easy to point to the Astros.
And where are we at right now? We're a game and a half up.
But, okay, so at one point, we went from 10 up to 1 back, and we fell 11 games. And it's easy to say, the Astros were good, but look, the bottom line is the Mariners were playing a bunch of easy teams, right? It was an easy schedule. It was the Marlins, the White Sox, the Rays. I mean, teams that were below 5, the Angels. The Angels
have been a problem.
5 out of 6 times.
The Angels have been a problem.
And not only were we playing one of the easiest schedules in the league, we also had a fully healthy lineup at that point.
I understand, but
and a fully healthy
you have
rotation.
to look at a totality.
At a totality.
Look, he's made the playoffs once in 8 years. Not good.
It's once in 8 years, exactly.
Is he the guy? Is he the reason? Is he the reason for getting guys on the team? No.
Well, I would argue that we have supplied him with good talent. I mean, look, here's what I'll give him.
The pitching staff has been great. You could argue that's because of SCOTT SERVAIS to a certain degree.
But he's not a pitching coach.
I understand, but
so it's hard to give him. It's hard to give him.
It's hard to give him credit for that for sure. The offense has been bad. Straight up, It's been bad. It's been consistently one of the worst in MLB. And at some point, you do have to look and say, what is the problem? We fired Brent Brown, I believe was his name.
Brent Brown.
Yeah, Brent Brown, the hitting coach.
Minimal effect, right?
Minimal effect. I don't think that in baseball, compared to a sport like football, I think managers have less effect on the actual outcome of the game. I think what the managers do best...
There's an element on inspiring the team.
But I think Scott does that well.
Were they inspired when they blew a 10-game lead?
Levi,
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of Mariners fans have short-term memory loss.
I think every Mariner player wants to win, and they don't just care about their personal stats. That's all I've heard in interviews.
I believe it,
but that's because of that culture that SCOTT SERVAIS has put in.
But if you go out, if you do end up missing the playoffs, it means that you successfully blew
a 10-game lead. I understand.
I don't think that a good manager is letting that happen.
Well, last year we almost came back from a 10 games out.
Yeah.
We had a great August.
We did.
That inspiring team, sure. And we came up a little bit short, but I mean, what can you do, there was a lot of good teams last year.
The bottom line is this is the fourth year in his managerial time when I think there's a legitimately we should make the playoffs. I think the last 3 seasons and 2018. So 2018, we had a really good team in 2018. And that was his 3rd year as manager. I think 2018...
A good team, but I don't think anyone outside of people in Seattle thought the Mariners were anything special.
Cruz, Seager. I mean, we had 5 All-Stars that year. It was a good team. I think 4 years, and I think if we make the playoffs this year, that means we were 2-2. That's good. If we miss the playoffs 1-3 in those 4 years... Yeah. It becomes I don't know. I don't think Dipoto should go yet. I don't. I think Service would be the one.
Okay, but I think if Dipoto, I think if one goes, both goes.
I think if Dipoto wants to get rid of Service, he could use him as a scapegoat to keep his job.
Yeah, I think that might be a package deal. I think that
it could be a package deal.
Dipoto and Scott have been so in cahoots for all 8 years where I feel like it seems kind of more like a package deal. But I see what you're saying. And, we're talking about playoffs over and over again. But look, give Scott some credit. I mean, we've missed the playoffs with high 80 win totals, 2 times now?
Yeah,
3 times?
We've been very good at being almost good enough.
Yes, but, if you're the Twins last year, you're making the playoffs with 88 wins.
Let me ask you this, Drew.
So what? Do the Twins manager gets a boost because he's not in the AL West?
Well, this year we might win.
Because according to Jerry, all you need to do is win 85 games, and Scott's done that 4 times now.
According to me, that's not all you have.
He's a winning manager with a team that has a below average payroll in the MLB.
Yeah.
All the players like him. He's had minimal disputes in the clubhouse compared to a lot of other teams. There's been a few guys like the Jared Kelenics, you mentioned a few guys that have had some problems as far as attitude, but for the most part, everyone wants to win. And I think a lot of the times it just comes down to people underperforming. And if your argument is it because of SCOTT SERVAIS, I see why you might want to fire him. But in this scenario, I don't think that, the chicken laid the egg in this scenario. I think these are 2 unrelated things.
I'd agree with that as well. I think you have to point to postseason success at some point. I mean, if you're the Seahawks, Drew,
they won a series. The one time they went to the postseason, they won a series, and they lost close 3 times to the Astros.
But if you go 9 years with only 2 playoff wins, I don't think that is worthy of another contract. If you're the Seahawks, are you giving him another contract? Based on the Pete Carroll,
Mike Tomlin's getting contracts for going 9-8 every year,
and I've openly said that he should be fired. So look,
at
least I'm consistent, right?
At least I'm consistent.
Yeah, we're both consistent. I think that, in my opinion, in sports, playoff success is what ultimately matters. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, even it's fine. Take your time, right? Once you're pushing 9, 10 years with a team, you have to start hanging some banners.
See, this is the fundamental question, I think, that really points me in what way you're on this argument, especially for you guys at home. I challenge you to actually think about this question, answer it. There's oftentimes change is something that people want so often because they're just tired of what's old. But Is there genuinely, you think in 2025, a higher chance the Mariners win more games with or without Scott Service? Because that should influence your decision, not just change for no reason. Because if Scott's better than what you're going to have in 2025, even if it's frustrating, that's still the way to go, right? You can take 100 jump shots. Your jump shot might not improve in that next game you play. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take 100 jump shots in the next practice. So I'm wondering, do you genuinely think that the Mariners have a better chance of winning more baseball games in 2025 if they fire Scott?
I think it always depends on the coach. But I think if they get the right guy in there, yes. I think Scott Service...
So you think the upside of another guy could bring us into the next tier?
I think Scott Service, he's been for 9 years, and he still occasionally screws up his bullpen choices. I mean,
the bullpen is undefendable sometimes.
His inability to look past righty-lefty matchups is infuriating, and I get it. The analytics say the righty-lefty matchups, and he's doing the Kevin Cash thing. He's trying to be Kevin Cash 2.0. He's trying to be Billy Beane on the A's. And I get why, but sometimes there's a time and a place to play the matchups. As again, with pinch hitting. Like there was a game when we were down by 1, runner on base, and we pinch hit Ryan Bliss over I don't remember who it was, but we pinch hit Bliss simply because of the matchup. It's like let's not do that. And Bliss hadn't played in a week. It's like he's very adamant towards these lefty-righty matchups. Yeah. Now, maybe that's something that's being told from Jerry. You have to do this. But if it is, then maybe Scott should make that known. I don't know.
There's a feel for the game that sometimes seems to be lacking.
It seems like he's too much in his head about
I think there was one time where like a Luke Raley goes 3 for 4, and then they take him out of the ninth.
Yep, I remember that game.
Yeah, so it's like, why is that decision being made? Okay, a computer says that's the right decision.
But there's a human element
because
there.
The computer doesn't care that Rayleigh's going 3 for 4 that day.
No.
But the human element says that a guy that's been waiting on the bench for 8.5 innings versus the guy that is now 3 for 4 super hot, you play that guy. And look, these are decisions that are hard. You know, there's many people making the decisions. I want to make that clear. Scott is the guy that says yes or no, but there are many people chirping about, in his ear. There are analytics guys in his ear. There are, hitting coaches. There's players even that have say in this. This is not just Scott Service. But at the end of the day, he is going to be the guy as the manager to kind of take some of that heat. The next thing I want to go, Levi, is the next topic where do you think Scott represents the team well on the off-the-field stuff? Do you think he's a good talker at the podium? Because this matters a lot, too. From a presentation standpoint, you could argue what Scott says kind of influences what we do in the off-season, for example. There could be some correlation between the Mariners not spending the off-season and what Scott kind of pushes for. Do you want someone maybe a little bit more strong-headed like that? Do you think there's any correlation there? Because I don't think there's much there, and I think Scott's pretty good behind the podium.
Yeah, I think he does generally a good job. So I do think that he saves his criticisms for the players, and I kind of like that. I don't think he needs to go out to the media every night and air his grievances.
Did you see him the other night?
He did air his grievances
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
that was rare, and people thought that was interesting because.
But yeah, most of the time he's not doing that, and I think that's generally good. I don't think that we need a manager who's going to go out there like what's his name on the White Sox, the old guy, La Russa. Just every
Tony
game,
La Russa.
every night they lost, he was out there shitting on the team.
Did I tell you that I got a signature from Tony La Russa?
Really?
In Cooperstown.
Wow.
I chased him down the street, running down the street. Quick side note. Running down the street, chased him down, got his signature, Tony La Russa.
Wow.
A couple years later, White Sox coach.
Yeah.
Turns out he's not a great head coach at the age of 105. So
no, he's not.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I think it's good that he has a lot of meetings without the press, and players only meetings happen a lot at the Mariners too, which obviously it doesn't have to do with Scott, but the fact he allows them to do stuff like that is pretty cool. It's definitely interesting, but I still think that the turnover wouldn't be beneficial.
Here's something that will impact my opinion. Come September, J.P. Crawford's going to come back to this team.
Mm-hmm.
J.P. Crawford has no business hitting leadoff. He's led off the entire season until he got hurt. He should not be the leadoff hitter in September. If he is, that is something that, again, I would oppose that decision from Scott Service. Yeah. I think there's guys in the team at this point, Robles, or you could throw Randy Rosarena at leadoff. You could throw. There's multiple guys I think who would be much better suited at leadoff.
I think those are the two guys.
Those are the two. But
Rosarena and Robles.
Yeah,
you could argue Rojas
that,
maybe,
but Rojas hasn't been great either.
Yeah,
lately. So
it's true.
But yeah, I mean, when you have Robles and a Rosarena who are both as hot as they are.
Well, but you've seen Scott, most recently move Julio down to 7. That's a decision that I think needed to be made. And what does Julio do? He responds with a 2-week stretch. That's been his best 2-week stretch in 2024. So there is stuff like that jumpstarts players' kind of mindsets and motivation that I think Scott's really good at. And it goes back to the fundamental question. I just don't think the Mariners will be a better team if they fire Scott Servais, make or miss the playoffs. This is a catalyst, a nucleus of a roster that, regardless of what happens this year, has the potential, because of those 5 starting pitchers, has the potential to make the playoffs. And although you can definitely point to Scott, I don't think that's the main reason. The offense is the thing that I'm concerned about. How much does he really have to say to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much. I don't think a manager has that much impact on the offense. I think what a manager has impact on is close games, which in past years we've won a lot. This year we've been so much. We've been about 50-50. I mean, we won a lot of close games in May and June, and then in July we lost every close game we played in. So but yeah, I think close games.
It was before the Phillies game. It was 8 straight one loss. I'm pretty sure. So.
In-game decisions is a big thing.
Yeah.
And just the motivation. I want to see come September, does this team have the fight in them? Because it's a sprint with the Astros, and right now you're about this far ahead. And I just watched Olympic sprinting, right? These guys, the ones who really want it, get it. Like
the lean.
Think about Noah Lyles.
The lean right at the end.
He wanted it, he got it, right? And that's the thing. If the Mariners want it enough, I think they can get it. And if Scott Servais wants to prove himself,
Scott.
I think he can. Like if we win the division, then I'm all for a 4-year extension. I'm all for it. If we miss the playoffs, and that is literally maybe I'm an idiot for this. I probably am. I literally, one game to me could be the difference between a 4-year extension and no extension at all. But
firing or not firing.
Not a fire, but it'd be a mutual parting ways.
Yeah.
And I think that may be the same way, that's the same exact thing that's going through John Stanton's head. There's a reason why they haven't been extended yet.
Yeah.
There's a reason why.
It's true. Last thing, Levi, John Stanton obviously makes a decision on Scott Servais, but also with Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander, who, in my opinion, have more influence on the team than Scott Servais, is Dipoto and Hollander. If Servais gets fired, is it time for them to go as well? Do you want if it was your way, do you want just to clean the house?
I would not.
So why? Okay, so I'm just interested. I'm getting interested. Why do they get the pass when the guys they brought in consistently in the offseason, year over year, have not been performing, and it's their job to bring the guys in?
Yeah.
And you could argue it's Scott's job to have these good players and make them be good in this new environment. But it's happened. I mean, I don't have to go over the list. I can if you want. But like Colton Wong, you have this year, you have Polanco, Mitch Garver. I mean, the list goes on and on, especially with the 1 through 9. Not necessarily pitching, obviously really good at developing relief pitchers for sure. Why did they get a pass but not Scott Servais if they miss the playoffs?
Well, they get a pass, in my opinion, 2 things. Number one, I do like their process and the guys they've acquired. There really isn't, in the recent years, from 2020 onward, because the first 4 years, Dipoto was not a good GM. If you're just going off of trades, he made a ton of bad trades in his first 3-4 years. Since 2020, he's made pretty much only good trades, or he's made trades where it was a bad player for a bad player. Like, yes, Colton Wong stunk. We didn't give up anything. Yes, Polanco has been a struggle at times this year, but we didn't really give up much for him either. So there's potentially. So I like his process, and secondly, I think that I would like to see. I think Dipoto, because of the farm system he's built, deserves a couple more years at least. Now, if
the farm system he's built in 2 years, he was bottom 10 farm system 2 years ago. Yeah.
If Emerson and Young and Laz Montes get up to the majors and they end up being busts, then it would probably be time because then at that point it's like, okay, you're struggling at finding good prospects, you're struggling at making trades. But I think between the good process on the trades, competitive trade deadline, which again I like this trade deadline a lot, and building this farm system, I think DePoto deserves 2 or 3 more years.
But he's made the playoffs one time, just how Scott Servais has.
Well, personally, I think on winning, I think a GM has less effect than a manager. Because he's not there with the players every day.
We got to go. We only got a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
We're about to close this one out, but the last thing is just he's not. I think that the 85 win comment, that definitely you have to hold some weight to that. I think he's not great behind the microphone. He's
true.
A little trade happy.
Well, and have you noticed he stopped doing interviews this year?
He doesn't go on 710 anymore.
No, the
Jerry DePoto
show has happened 3 times, I believe, this year.
And it used to be weekly. Yes. Probably a good thing. He's not great behind the microphone.
Yeah.
He brought in Justin Hollander, which technically the GM. I think Jerry DePoto, the president of operations or whatever. I think that's a good thing. But I think the 3 criticisms you can kind of go through is trade happy. He isn't great behind the microphone, and I think that consistently he brings guys in the offseason and they're worse than what they were in their previous team.
Sure.
The positives, he's turned into one of the best drafters in MLB.
Yeah. I guess
year over year.
You could argue that maybe that's more on the scouting director than it is on him.
That's true. But who
I don't
hired the scouting director?
Right.
Probably him.
So I guess if you're going to get rid of Jerry, promote the scouting director to GM. Because
that's true.
Whoever's doing the scouting is
doing
freaking stud.
Well, last year, the 4th and 6th round pick, turned into Randy Rosarena.
Yeah.
I mean, that's elite type of stuff.
Yeah, that's
He's turned into one of the best drafters. He's really good at analyzing specifically pitching in the minor leagues and stuff, where he makes random trades or random acquisitions and turns them into, mid-relief, high-leverage relievers, sometimes even, a starter here and there. And I think something else he does pretty well is that he consistently is putting these teams with not a limited cap roll. Oh my goodness, I can't talk right now. It's 12:30. A limited cap space and not much money given to him. He does a lot with it. I do think so, but sometimes he does go cheap because of that.
Yeah, he does go cheap sometimes, and again,
and that's some criticism. But
is that his fault or is that Stanton's fault?
True. I'm not sure, and I do think that
because Stanton would say it was him. Stanton said Jerry likes winning with low payrolls. He wants to prove he's a good GM.
Why don't you just give him more money?
Right. I don't know.
If anyone, if I could fire anyone, I'd
fire John Stanton. Yeah.
Thank you.
But kudos to them. They actually were willing to put their pocketbook into winning this trade deadline, which I didn't think was going to happen. True.
You would think they would do it in the offseason.
They saved it all for the deadline.
Instead, they traded Jerry. The move I can't get past. If this was Jerry DePoto, obviously it was because of the restraint he had with the money, but trading Jared Kelenic just because of the money.
Yeah.
You got nothing. What did you get? You got to offload Marco Gonzalez's contract.
Yeah.
And Evan White. That's the only thing you got. So
you got 2 pitchers who just got Tommy
John. In a league that isn't capped by money like an NFL, you can't make trades like that, in my opinion. You have to keep talent. What are we searching for now? Well, now we got our Randy Rosarena, but what were we searching for? A corner outfield. What did Jared Kelenic give you? An above-average corner outfield. And if that was Jerry DePoto's sole idea, I think that's, an offense that's kind of worth fireball, honestly, if we miss the playoffs this year, because that's one of the reasons we're going to miss it, because it's that corner outfield. I think if Jerry DePoto, if Scott Servais gets fired, I think Jerry needs to get fired. But if I had it my way, I think both should not be fired, even if they miss the playoffs this year. Levi?
My way would be, if you miss the playoffs, Scott does not get extended.
And Jerry stays.
And Jerry does get extended, which I don't know how likely that even happens.
I do not think Jerry gets fired and Scott stays. I don't see that. I do not see that happening. I could foresee Jerry staying and
I think
Scott getting
there's
fired.
a possibility that Jerry goes to Stanton and says, look, I need a new coach to put us over the top.
But I don't see it the other way.
I don't think, if Jerry goes, Scott goes too.
Yeah. All right, that's the NW Sportscast. A little bit longer of a video, but lots of interesting stuff. The Mariners 1.5 games up now after the Astros lose again today. A little bit of a skid for the Astros, and the Mariners now have an opportunity to really take it from the Astros here after winning 2 of 3 against the Phillies. We are in the middle of Olympics. Levi uploaded a couple of things on this channel. We know a guy who went to the Olympics. Pretty cool. And, there's a Seattle Reign soccer player playing there. He also made a video on that. Also, a lot of coast-to-coast content. If you don't know the Coast to Coast, more Levi's channel, but I occasionally upload there too. It's more of our, not Northwest Pacific related content.
If you followed the power rankings last year for NFL.
True. Yes. We're going to get back on that, by the way. Yes.
And it won't be on this channel. It'll be on there.
It'll be on the Coast to Coast. Yeah. So there's a little bit more broad. We want to keep this NW Sportscast specific. Last thing, the Seahawks, they're starting to ramp up. So as they ramp up, guess what that means? We're ramping up Seahawks content as well. Super pumped for the NFL. Not so pumped for the inevitable, 9-8, 8-9 season that's forthcoming, but we will talk about that as well. And that's about all. This is Drew Albaugh, Levi Coover, NW Sportscast, and as always,
go Mariners.
See you guys.